Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the International Community Candidate Forum for this Ward 13 race, At Global Cleveland, we are excited to host this non-political, non-endorsement, community-centered conversation. We look forward to this discussion and the positive momentum for Cleveland's future that it will produce. If English is not your first language, please check the Zoom options bar for the interpreter function. If the option is available, we have live interpretation. If you click that tab, you should see an option for languages. Thank you. Before I introduce our moderator and candidates, I would like to thank our partners. Without them, this would not have been possible. Our partners include, in alphabetical order, Asia Inc., Asiatown Cleveland, Bobondo Community of Greater Cleveland, British American Chamber of Commerce of Ohio, Building Hope in the City Club of Cleveland, Cleveland Council on World Affairs, Council on International Programs USA, Cleveland Cultural Gardens, Collaborative Chambers Alliance, Connecting Cleveland, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, NAACP of Cleveland, Ohio Progressive Asian Women's Leadership, Refugee Response, Smart Development Inc., Us Together, USCRI Cleveland, and the Young Latino Network. Thank you. Putting this on would not have been possible without you. Now, before I explain the guidelines of this forum, we have a short video from Mo Kantner, our national partner, the New American Economy.
Hello, and welcome to today's Candidate Forum with Global Cleveland. My name is Mo Kantner, and I'm the Director of State and Local Initiatives at New American Economy. At New American Economy, we're a bipartisan research and advocacy organization that focuses on making the economic case for better immigration policies at the federal, state, and local levels. Now, immigration may feel like an abstract issue debated at the national level through very technical, political, and bureaucratic constraints, and that's partially true, but immigrant integration happens at the local level. How communities attract and welcome newcomers helps lay the foundation for whether a person stays, works, starts a small business, or raises a family. In Cleveland alone, there are over 125,000 immigrants. They pay over $1.3 billion in taxes and help fill workforce needs in healthcare, manufacturing, and other critical industries. They're also over 60% more likely than the US-born population to start a small business in Cleveland. They not only help fill workforce needs, they create jobs for other Americans. And that is something that can't be captured at the national level. Those impacts are happening on the ground every day in Cleveland's communities. Our local elected officials have a huge impact on people's day-to-day lives. And when policies are established that let everyone live up to their potential, everybody benefits. So thank you again for participating in this critical conversation, and remember to vote.
Mo is a wonderful partner. The New American Economy does great work, and we're appreciative of her support. Okay, we will quickly review the guidelines before moving into questions. All candidates will receive 2 minutes to respond to each question. If a response hits 2 minutes and 30 seconds, they will be muted to allow for the efficient movement through the questions. The candidates will answer alphabetically, with the person who went second on the previous question answering first on the subsequent question. Also, any and all derogatory language or personal attacks will result in a candidate being muted and the next candidate being allowed to answer a question. This is supposed to be a civil discussion. Let's please keep it that way and respect everyone in attendance. Next, I would like to introduce our candidates running for office in Ward 13. First, we have Kris Harsh. Kris Harsh was born in Canton, Ohio, and graduated from Glen Oak High School and the University of Akron. He moved to Cleveland in 1998 and found work around town as a taxi driver, bartender, high-rise window washer, and a house painter. Since, he has worked extensively in community development and seeks to continue working for his community on City Council. Kate Warren. Kate Warren is a resident of Old Brooklyn and is experienced in public service, having worked with Cleveland's homeless population and in community development for the last 6 years. She deeply values public service and hopes to bring her experience to City Council. And without further ado, I will now hand it over to Paul Burek, our moderator for this evening.
Hello, all. Thank you for the introduction. And may I ask, first of all, if I can address you, the two candidates, by your first name without being too assuming? All right, that's great. Thank you, Kate and Kris. With that, let's get started with the questions. And as was noted, they were pre-paired. So I'm going to read them up, and I believe they're going to be shown on the screen also. What is your experience serving and interacting with the international community in your own community and in Northeastern Ohio at large? How has this shaped your understanding of your community and your role as a leader? And I guess we'll start with Kris.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. Is the audio working okay?
Yes.
We're good. Great. Okay, so I'll just jump right into the question. I've had a number of interactions with immigrant and refugee and migrant communities here in Northeast Ohio. I've been working very extensively these last 7 years in the Latino community. Es muy importante en esta comunidad. Yo hablo español también. It's very helpful when you work in our community to be able to speak 2 languages, and I am conversational in Spanish, so that's been very good for me. Some of my earliest experiences, though, as a community organizer, were actually in Asia Town. I worked on Perkins there with ESOP, and it was a large Chinese immigrant community. Fortunately, at ESOP, we had a intern from Case Western Reserve University, and her name is Zhao Ran. And I asked her if she would be interested in going around the neighborhood to ask residents about their biggest concerns in the neighborhood. And it turns out the biggest concern was they couldn't even talk to government officials, because at the time, Cleveland had nobody that could speak Mandarin or Cantonese. So I was very pleased when I looked up the city's website the other day to find out that we now do have a Mandarin and Cantonese translator at the city Department of, I think it's Community Development, which is fantastic, because I helped put together the first initial community meeting for the Chinese community, as well as to meet with their city council person. I've also worked extensively with the Congolese community here on the near west side, a community that's working very hard to make lives in America. I've been able to help a number of refugees in terms of financial and housing situations. It's interesting, I don't speak any French. They oftentimes do. So we have fun playing with French and Spanish. But I've worked, so to recap, with the Congolese, with the Latino, which isn't really an immigrant community, although some of them are, and the Asian community extensively.
Thank you, Kris. Very detailed answer. Kate, are you ready to follow up on that?
Yes, thank you for the question. So this question caused me to really reflect on Cleveland's rich history and heritage of immigrants. And my family's story is that my great-grandfather, along with his 11 siblings and his parents, immigrated to Cleveland from Russia in the early 1900s. And they settled in Slavic Village, and many of his siblings got jobs in manufacturing and in the garment industry at that time. And I think it's helpful to remember that many of us are the children or grandchildren of immigrants, and at one time we were newcomers here. And many of the immigrants who are in Cleveland today are facing that same situation of being new to this place. I've been grateful throughout my life to have a lot of personal interactions with immigrants. My college roommate was an international student from Korea, and I got involved with an international student organization when I was at Cleveland State. And today, some of my closest friends are immigrants or first-generation Americans, and I've learned a lot from them about how important it is to see representation that looks like them in government and in leadership, and also how important it is to not forget about them when we are talking about who lives in Cleveland. I think often there's this narrative that Cleveland is, made up of mostly Black and white people, and everyone else gets sort of lumped into an other category when we're looking at data about our population and our demographics. And I've heard from so many friends about how that makes them feel left out in this narrative and makes them wonder if Cleveland is a place for them. And so I recognize the importance of acknowledging people when we're talking about the different ethnic groups that live here. That live here in Cleveland. In my professional and my civic work, I've had the opportunity to work with many of the organizations that are putting on this forum, including Asia, Building Hope in the City, Asia Town, Opal, and others. Last year in 2020, I served on Cleveland's Complete Count Committee and was involved in local advocacy around census outreach and getting education to communities about the census. And I've seen the local impact of the lack of good available data concerning especially smaller ethnic groups in Cleveland. I think we need to do a better job engaging those communities and making sure that we have good data on the issues that they're facing.
Okay, good. And since we're all revealing our heritage, I'm a first generation immigrant from Czech Republic, used to be Czechoslovakia when we came here in 68. So Slavic village is close to my heart. Question number 2 is, our population loss from 2010 to 2018 would have been even worse if not for the 37,000 immigrants who moved into Cuyahoga County during that time. These new residents have offset the population loss by 45%. How can we attract more immigrants to move here to continue this important trend? And we'll switch around and we'll start with Kate.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think you hit on a really important point that a lot of people don't consider, really that the struggles that we face as a city because of our population loss and because of urban sprawl, issues like declining revenue, housing vacancy, access to jobs, that these issues are actually offset by newcomers who are coming to Cleveland from other countries. So I think sometimes we hear these narratives that immigrants are coming to America and they're stealing jobs from people who've been living here for a long time. But what we know from research is actually that immigrants are hard workers, they contribute to our local economies, they add richness and diversity to our community, and they're good neighbors. And so when we think about what we can do to attract them, I think on one hand, we have to do the things that we would do to attract anyone to our city. We have to work to improve city services. We have to increase access to affordable and safe housing, to quality education, to well-paying jobs. But we also have to do things to support the immigrant community specifically. And I think we have to build on what many organizations in Cleveland are already doing. We have to do work to connect people to resources and social networks so that once they move here, they can learn how to access the things that they need, things like legal assistance, housing assistance, help navigating social service systems. And we also have to work to build inclusive communities that celebrate diversity. I've talked with many immigrants in my neighborhood who say they have felt welcomed here, but I also know people across the city who have experienced harassment or hatred because of their race or ethnicity, and that they've had those things happen to them right here in our community. And we have to come together as a community and speak out against those things when they happen, and continue to build social connections that make this a welcoming place for everyone.
All right, thanks, Kate. Kris, can you give us your answer?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer this question falls into the broad category of placemaking. I've been part of the International Village effort for 7 years now, which is a geographical area of the sort of between Clark, Storer area on the near west side in the Denison, Clark, Fulton sort of neighborhood area. There are 3 issues, and Ms. Warren did touch on a few of them, but housing, schools, and jobs, I think, are the really big issue. There is not only the first influx of immigrants that come to the country, but there's also the second move. And we want to be attractive to people who come into a different city first, but then are looking for their long-term home. And we want them to choose Cleveland for their long-term home. So there's ways to make our community attractive, not only to immigrants to move here for the first time to America, but also when they choose their second place after they've been here for a while. The 3 things that can help us do that are making sure that we have available housing that's affordable. Immigrants very quickly want to own their own homes. I work with a lot of people that are trying to buy houses within a couple of years of being here because they recognize the long-term stability of owning a home, as well as the financial benefits of being a homeowner in America. The second is schools. So we have Thomas Jefferson Jr., the Newcomers Academy on the near west side, which speaks 28 different languages, I believe. It's an opportunity for every parent to send their kids to a school where somebody in that staff, some staff member at that school is going to be able to talk to the parent in their native language. And the third issue, so we need to have a school structure that welcomes immigrant children and brings them into the community and makes them feel at home. And the last one is jobs. Everybody needs a place to work to put bread on the table. So we need to make sure that we're creating enough jobs to support people moving to the city. But if we can do those 3 things, housing, schools, and jobs, and get people to put themselves in Cleveland long-term, too often we see the trend where people move to Cleveland, and then as soon as they can, they try to follow other trends where they move outside the city to follow, wealthier suburban, families. And we need to make sure that we retain those folks and keep them here so that they see Cleveland as the future for their children and grandchildren as well.
Good. Good. Thank you, Kris, for your reply. And we will move on to next question, which you see on your screen, and which is, there are over 1,000 immigrant entrepreneurs in Cleveland, and they are 38% more likely to be entrepreneurs than US-born residents. What portion of the Economic Development Office in the city of Cleveland would be devoted to supporting immigrant entrepreneurs under your leadership? And we'll go with Kris again to give you the first opportunity.
I think there's a chance that was a question for mayoral candidates. The city council wouldn't directly control the economic development office.
Well, it is one of the questions provided. So if you want to give
Okay.
it a crack.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry, there was a different question on screen. So, so the Department of Economic Development assists, people with forming new businesses in Cleveland. Locally, we have community development offices. We have community development corporations, the CDC infrastructure. In Old Brooklyn, we have the Old Brooklyn CDC, which does a fantastic job helping people set up new businesses. They've been very successful working with immigrant communities. El Rincon Creole, IRI, just to name a few, are businesses that are starting up in Old Brooklyn. It's definitely a welcome change in the neighborhood. People in the community are very happy to see these restaurants open up and be there for their culinary options. So I think you continue to strengthen that. We've got a lot of storefronts in Old Brooklyn that are empty, and that means we have a lot of opportunities for people that want to set up businesses. So the idea is to reach out to that community, make sure that your local community development corporation has staffing available to work with them. And then, of course, the number one issue is going to be translation services. If we do have people that are struggling with English, I have been around the neighborhood about a couple of times already and talked to 1,000 of our neighbors, and I'm keeping a list of who can translate which languages. I'm up to about a dozen, which is fantastic, so that we can reach out within our neighborhood to make sure that people that want to work in our community can work with other people in our community if they need help with translating their languages. So I think providing that infrastructure is something the city council can do from the office, and making sure that our CDCs are poised and ready to continue that good work is the other thing we can do.
Thanks, Kris. And how about you, Kate? What would you say?
Yeah, so like Kris said, as a city council member, I won't have direct oversight over the economic development budget, but generally I would say I'm supportive of making sure that we as a city are making equitable investments into business owners who maybe are traditionally left out of the lending process, and making sure that that those folks have access to resources that they need to start businesses. So that would include immigrants. It would also include other minority groups and women, people who want to start businesses in our communities. The Economic Development Department gets about $2 million out of the general fund budget. Most of that goes to staff. And so when we talk about the percentage that would go to these certain programs, I would say we should start with having some dedicated staff in the Economic Development Department who are dedicated to working with immigrant entrepreneurs in our community, who that's their whole job, is to do that outreach. I think lots of business owners in Cleveland have challenges with things like permitting processes and red tape that it takes to get their business inspected and up and running. And if we can do things to provide assistance to them to help make those systems run more smoothly, that's going to be good for our neighborhoods, it's going to be good for our businesses, and it's going to be good for our residents. Can't tell you how many businesses I've talked to that are trying to open or trying to expand who are just really stuck with dealing with the city and need some assistance and need an advocate in navigating that process.
All right. And we'll go right back to you, Kate. The next question is sort of similar, has to do with structure of the organization on a city side. Would you and how would you support adding new members and staff to the Community Relations Board that represent the changing immigrant population in Cleveland, such as African Immigrant Community Liaison and Arab Immigrant Community Liaison?
Yeah, thanks for this question. So when I was serving on the City of Cleveland's Complete Count Committee last year, I had the opportunity to meet and work with several of the members of the Community Relations Board. And this board is a really important part of how the city works to address social and cultural issues in Cleveland. Members are appointed by the mayor, but City Council approves those members, those appointments. And right now there's 14 members on the body. And I think when we think about making a more representative community relations board, City Council could explore adding some seats to that board. I would also be interested in engaging with the Arab and the African immigrant populations in Cleveland to find out like who are the leaders in your community, who are the right people to represent your community on this board, and also to be advocates for the city back to the community. And so I would be very interested in expanding and making that group more representative of the different groups that are in Cleveland.
Thanks, Kate. How about you, Kris?
I mean, the more the merrier, right? This is a melting pot. I mean, I can't really see any reason not to have more people involved if they want to be involved. If there's budgetary issues, I would be curious to find out what they are. I'm not in there right now dissecting the budget for the Community Relations Board. I'm not sure what impact that would have on it, but money is always a subject. But I see no reason not to. I do know on the near west side, we have a very robust Arab American community. There's a lot of infrastructure built up for that community. I think that's fantastic. And I've been happy to work with them through my career. I think that the African community poses a different challenge because you're just dealing with so many languages. There is no, every time I drive underneath the, I think it's 90 over by Tremont, and I look at all the national flags and I see one flag for Africa, I cringe and chuckle at the naivety that we have about the continent. There are dozens of languages spoken in Africa, and I don't know if one person is going to be able to handle all that. So I think the question would be, what language services do we need specifically, and make sure that the communities with the burgeoning language needs are met first, simply out of a numbers issue. But yeah, I mean, it's a melting pot for a reason. I think the more the merrier.
All right, Kris. We are approaching our time limit. I checked the Q&A box and I don't see any QAs coming in. So I will go with one more question for you, which I think is quite relevant to Cleveland. And that would be question number 5. On average, and we'll start with Kris, okay? On average, 500 to 700 refugees are resettled to Cleveland every year from countries such as Nepal, Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Somalia. The Biden-Harris administration announced they will increase refugee admission to 125,000 a year nationally, up from 15,000 this year. This means Cleveland's 3 refugee resettlement agencies will receive 3 to 4 times as many families as they did this past year. How do you plan to open Cleveland for these new residents and provide refugees with the opportunity to contribute to Cleveland? And he said we're going to start with Kris, correct?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. So back in 2016, I was part of a project with Global Cleveland to deal and to prepare our city for the influx of what we thought were going to be refugees from, I believe it was Syria and the Congo. And our plan at the time was to make housing readily available, to have a quality, clean, affordable housing available for people as they got here so that we could settle them very quickly. And we had developers, we had partners, we had a lot of people lined up. Of course, the 2016 election didn't turn out the way a lot of us wanted it to. And President Trump ended up putting an end to refugee resettlement plans for the next 4 years, but they're back on. I was already contacted by, I think it was by HUD, at my work to ask if we were still able to receive that influx. And I told them that the housing market has changed a bit, but we are happy and ready and willing to jump on that project again and dust off those books and get it ready. So refugee resettlement is a very important issue, and refugees are some of the most resilient people on earth. We should be proud to call them Cleveland residents, and we should be doing everything we can to encourage refugees to resettle here. I have noticed in my work that a lot of people that are new to the country are targeted by other people for for their lack of understanding about the way things work. And we have to get to people quickly and make sure that they know about financial processes, and that they understand the difference between legitimate transactions and illegitimate transactions, because unfortunately there are in our community scam artists who will go around taking advantage of people who have I don't have a better word than naivety, but a misunderstanding of how things are done here. So we need to make sure that we get a proper introduction, that we welcome people in quickly, and that we get them into reputable channels where they can avoid some of the pitfalls that I've seen happen with some refugee communities. So it's about making sure they have a clean, safe place to live, and then are supported in their for their community support as soon as they get here.
Okay, Kris, good answer. How about Kate?
Yeah, I think Kris touched on a lot of really important points. I think, you know, so often these things are challenging because so much immigration policy is set at the federal level, and then as cities, we have to respond and be flexible to what's happening at the federal level. Mo touched on this in her remarks at the beginning, that there are things that we can do locally to make Cleveland more open and more welcoming to refugees. I think, first of all, we should do some learning from people who live here now, who came to Cleveland as refugees, to find out what are the biggest challenges that they faced when they first moved here, what was most helpful to them, what was missing when they moved here, and then find ways to fill in those gaps. Some of the biggest challenges that I'm familiar with are around learning to navigate new systems, whether it's figuring out how to rent an apartment, how to buy a house, how to take public transit, how to enroll in school, how to apply for a job, or even something like accessing healthcare or accessing social services. These systems are complex, and it's hard for people to figure out how to navigate them. And so, and those are things that are overwhelming and time consuming for anyone. But if you have language challenges and you are facing stress from moving to a new place and leaving behind you know, struggles in the country that you're coming here from, that's really a challenge for folks, and we have to try to smooth that process. And so I think doing this pays dividends as a community. If we can invest in folks when they first get here, they become established and engaged members of our community, and they contribute to the economy, and they are good neighbors. So my role on City Council will be to be an advocate for those folks and to work as a connector to the right kinds of services for people.
Good, Kate, thank you. So that will conclude our question period. I would just like to thank everyone once again for attending the candidate forum. We would like to thank the candidates for coming here in good faith to speak to the international community today. I want to go off script here a little bit, and I trust that you have opportunity or had opportunity to visit the Cleveland Cultural Gardens on East Boulevard and MLK, 33 nationality gardens built by immigrants, a unique place and testament to what the immigrant community can do for the city. As a reminder, we invited every candidate running for the election in this ward, and everyone was given equal opportunity to reply. You can find the answers to these questions from every candidate who completed the questionnaire on our website, and that would be the Global Cities website. We would especially like to thank you, the audience, for coming, and it is your vote that determines the next generation of Cleveland city leaders. Thank you to the interpreters as well, and I don't think we had any on this session. And we want to thank the partners who made this broadcast available: Asia Inc., Asia Town Cleveland, Bodando Community of Greater Cleveland, British American Chamber of Commerce, Building Hope in a City, City Club of Cleveland, Cleveland Council on World Affairs, Council on International Programs USA, Cleveland Cultural Gardens, Collaborative Chambers Alliance, Connecting Cleveland, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Global Shapers Cleveland, NAACP of Cleveland, Ohio Progressive Asian Women's Leadership, Refugee Response, Smart Development Inc., excuse me, US Together, USCRI Cleveland, Young Latino Network. All these organizations are wonderful, doing wonderful work in our community, and please visit their media and their websites. Again, thank you all for participating, and good luck in the upcoming race.